print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or even impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. If you would like more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, May 5th, or Cinco de Mayo. Your readers today are Lori and
Lita.
Okay, let's start with the weather. Periods of rain today, breezy during the morning with a high of 63. Rain tonight with a low of 43. A little rain tomorrow morning, otherwise cloudy and colder. High of 47. Thursday, remaining cold and cloudy with a passing shower and a high of 50. Friday, another couple of showers. And did you know that today the total possible sunshine is 14 hours and 17 minutes? That's encouraging.
I'm loving that.
If you want to be warmer, though, you're going to have to go to Childress, Texas, 92. And if you're having hot flashes and need to be colder, Berlin, New Hampshire, 24. The air quality index today is just good. We're heading towards moderate, but it's good. The sun sets tonight at 8:21, and did you know that the record low temperature for the lower 48 states in May was set in 1964, minus 15 in White Mountain, California?
Wow, that's cold.
Yeah. On to you.
Okay. I just want to say I find that the words that they use now, if it was February, 50 would be warm, but now 50 is cold.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, so from the front page of the Buffalo News, it's beginning of the end for the Bills' longtime home. The former home of the Buffalo Bills has taken a major step toward becoming a thing of the past, but it will not go out with a bang. Power was officially turned off at Highmark Stadium Friday. It is considered the start of the stadium's mass demolition and is a significant milestone for the project as the new stadium nears completion. While the actual demolition isn't scheduled to be done until next spring, work to ready the site for decommission the stadium is already occurring. An increase in heavy construction machinery activity and noise and dust is expected at the current stadium site on Abbott Road, across from where the new Highmark Stadium is being built and will open for the 2026 season. Explosives and implosions that have marked the end of other historic stadiums nationwide will not be used by the Bills, the team said. The demolition will be mechanical, and the stadium will come down piece by piece. Crews will use heavy equipment such as bulldozers, excavators, and wrecking balls. The Bills plan to keep their old administration building behind the current stadium and will be using parking lots next to and around the current stadium during the 26th season as the excavation process occurs. Demolition is underway, and as part of the process, power was disconnected at the former stadium as scheduled on the 1st of May, the Bills confirmed in a statement. The project is slated for completion by March of 27. The beginning of the end of the stadium started in February when Brandon Steiner's Collectible Exchange began taking down signs and goalposts and then ripping up seats and benches from the concrete. The turf and other items around the stadium followed. The items were put up for sale to fans wanting a piece of the stadium where the Buffalo Bills played for 53 years. Steiner's company was retained by the Bills and Erie County to salvage any stadium elements with resale value. They will split the proceeds with the county, which is expected to take in more than $1 million. Collectible Exchange was expected to be done harvesting stadium items in April. Well, it's May, hello. Likely setting the stage for some of the more significant work to take apart the stadium to begin this month. The current stadium hosted its final game on the 4th of January. Its footprint is a little over 900,000 square feet, and it's about 830 feet wide and 930 feet long, and has about 70,000 seats for the fans. The project includes decommissioning of the current stadium, demolition, abatement, and disconnecting and removing existing utilities so the site can be filled to grade. It will likely be turned into a parking lot, although the Bills have talked about the potential for other uses. Much of the fill will come from the dirt and soil lifted to create the hole for the new stadium. That is being stored next door to the SUNY Erie Community College campus on Southwestern Boulevard. ARC Building Partners in the project lead for demolition Breeze National of Long Island is expected to be a major player in the effort to deconstruct the stadium through the demolition and asbestos abatement program. The downstate company led the demolition of Shea Stadium in Queens in 2009. The latest NFL stadium being demolished is RFK Stadium in Washington, D.C., as the Commanders prepare to start building a new stadium expected to be open for the year 2030. It is also being taken down piece by piece rather than a quick-fire implosion. The removal of the stadium's structural steel has been completed, and the demolition of the remaining concrete structure and sorting of metal and concrete is nearly done over a year after the project started. The Georgia Dome in Atlanta was one of the latest NFL stadiums to be imploded in 2017 to make way for Mercedes-Benz Stadium, the home of the Falcons. A few years later, Candlestick Park in San Francisco was taken down piece by piece over multiple months after a plan to implode the stadium was scrapped amid concerns the blast might create health problems for people living nearby. Originally part of the planned demo in Orchard Park, the Bills had a change of heart about its old administration building, which was constructed with the current stadium in '73 to house the team's football and administrative offices. Although close to the stadium, it is structurally independent from it. The old administration building is at the east end zone of the current stadium toward Big Tree Road and across from the field house. Much of the team's staff and operations were moved to the newer administrative building attached to the field house, which was built in 1995 and went through major renovations more than a decade ago. But the older administration building continues to be used daily. It now serves as office space for about 25 staff members and as a hub for staff check-ins, game productions, IT infrastructure, and event command operations. The first floor was used on game day for food and beverage operations, but that will move over to the new stadium.
And there's secret information in the Tops shooting, which is called a national security risk. Federal officials hold classified information about the racist mass shooting in Buffalo on May 14th of 22 that they say should not be turned over to shooter Peyton Gendron's defense team. The disclosure of the material could raise issues of national security that the court will need to address, according to a recent prosecution filing in the U.S. District Court in Buffalo. Prosecutors have asked U.S. District Judge Lawrence Villardo for a pretrial conference. At that proceeding, prosecutors would propose a schedule for filing motions under the Federal Classified Information Procedures Act over protective orders for the deletion, substitution, or disclosure of classified information. For a lot of reasons, I can't discuss it in court, Department of Justice trial attorney Kevin Nunnally said during a recent court hearing. So, it remains publicly unknown the type or even amount of classified information that is at issue, when the information was collected, and which agencies are involved. Prosecutors are willing to present the information in a private proceeding before the judge without the defense team present to review the sensitive documents. It's very small, Nunnally said in court about the amount of classified information related to the case. It won't take the court very long to review the information if the judge grants the ex parte and in-camera review of the classified information, said Nunnally, who works for the National Security Division's Counterterrorism Section in the Department of Justice. The public defenders representing Gendron in the death penalty case have asked Villardo to order the government to provide them with an unclassified summary of the evidence it seeks to withhold. Without such a summary, Peyton Gendron's ability to provide the court with the target information necessary to a fair determination of whether the evidence is relevant and material to the guilt or penalty phases of his trial will be significantly and needlessly impaired, a defense filing in court stated. Gendron's lawyers have objected to the government's proposal to provide information to the court in private and without the defense present, saying the federal law clearly assumes that the defense will be present and involved. The Classified Information Procedures Act outlines procedures for federal judges to follow when they are ruling on matters concerning the discovery, admissibility, and use of classified information in criminal cases. The purpose of the act is to balance a defendant's right to obtain and present exculpatory material at trial, but also the national interest in protecting classified material from unnecessary disclosure at any stage of a criminal trial. The government seeks to summarily deny the defense any information about the evidence other than its counsel's belief that there isn't a lot of it, according to the defense filing. The government offers no reason why the defense cannot be told, at a minimum, the type and amount of information at issue, the period of time the information was collected, and the general topics to which the evidence might be relevant, the defense filing states. At this point, the defense has no information regarding the nature of the evidence, the defense lawyer said. Without some information, defense counsel cannot adequately respond to the government's requested procedures or timeline, other than to lodge general objections and provide the court with unnecessarily expansive information about the possible guilt and penalty phase defenses. Gendron's lawyers said they would not object to a protective order restricting them from disclosing the unclassified summary of the information. Velardo on Thursday granted the prosecution's unopposed motion to designate a classified information security officer and alternate officers. The officers can assist the judge and other court personnel in matters related to the Classified Information Procedures Act, but the judge deferred scheduling a pretrial conference, which the government asked for to address the case schedule and address any questions the judge might have about issues raised in the government's motion. At the April 22nd court hearing, Velardo gave the government until Wednesday to reply to the defense team's April 28th filing and said the government's Classified Information Procedures Act filing is due by June the 12th. Gendron already has been sentenced to life in prison without parole on his guilty pleas to 10 state charges of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree attempted murder, among other charges. Gendron's trial in federal court, which will begin no sooner than October the 13th, will determine whether he should receive the death penalty or spend the rest of his life in prison. A federal grand jury returned a 27-count indictment against Gendron in July of 2022. The Justice Department announced in January 2024 that it will seek the death penalty.
And still no budget, but one frustrated lawmaker has a new name for Hochul, Chameleon. Governor Kathy Hochul has served as the Erie County Clerk, a member of Congress, Lieutenant Governor, and the first woman to be Governor of New York. On Monday, Senator Thomas O'Mara, a Republican who represents Eastern Allegheny County, offered a less distinguished description for the Buffalo-born governor while venting about a state budget that is now more than a month overdue. She's been a chameleon, O'Mara, the ranking Republican on the Senate Finance Committee, told reporters. Lawmakers had just passed their 9th extender bill to keep state operations funded through Wednesday. O'Mara and fellow Senate Republicans who sit in the minority in their House addressed reporters to question the effectiveness and transparency of Democrats who control the governor's office in both houses of the legislature. When a reporter suggested that some Democrats, including Hochul, were moderate and not necessarily rubber-stamping proposals in the budget, O'Mara quickly disagreed. She may be from Western New York, but the policies that she's espoused and led the way on certainly are not moderate in this state, O'Mara said. I don't think we have any moderation going on in these budget discussions. The budget just continues to grow, seemingly exponentially from year to year. It's unsustainable. Somebody needs to be in check on where this spending is going, because seeing what's leading to, which is New Yorkers fleeing the state. O'Mara said Hochul was a little more conservative when as Erie County Clerk. She opposed then Governor Eliot Spitzer's plan to issue driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. She then said she supported the issuance of the driver license to the immigrants as running mate for former Governor Andrew Cuomo. And he said Hochul had a top rating of gun rights from the NRA while running for Congress, but no longer holds that distinction. Not anymore. That's completely changed. So it changes for the circumstances, O'Mara says. Asked how he would describe Hochul's politics, O'Mara said, she's catering to the New York City, Manhattan elites, and liberal base. A spokesperson for Hochul responded, throughout her career, Governor Hochul has never let the political noise distract her from putting New Yorkers first. Under her leadership, crime has fallen, housing is being built, families have access to more affordable childcare, and she'll continue delivering meaningful results. In January, Hochul proposed a $260 billion budget, which grew to nearly $263 billion when Hochul added her 30-day budget amendments in February. The Assembly later passed its own budget proposal at $266 billion, and the Senate won at $270 billion. Hochul, Assembly Speaker Carl Heastie, and Senator Majority Leader Andrea Stewart Cousins have been discussing several policy issues unrelated to spending as they work toward a budget agreement. Hochul told reporters on Friday that a framework deal on a budget could happen this week.
And, in my view, Judith Geer of Holland has many friends and relatives on the other side of the border, and she says, more than an anthem connects us. But first, we will say you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, the time being 15 minutes after the hour. So, what about that anthem? When Buffalo Sabres fans took over the Canadian national anthem after soloist Cammy Clune's mic cut out before last Tuesday's game, the incident sparked national interest. Commentators around the U.S. and Canada were taken aback that an American audience would be able to sing the Canadian anthem with such gusto on the spur of the moment. But for those of us who'd grown up in Western New York, there was no surprise at all. I don't know many Americans in this area who don't associate with Canadians on at least a semi-frequent basis. Canadians, they come here to shop, to work, to go to college, and to have fun at sporting and cultural events. There are just a few differences in dialect and the color of our money. However, there's another more potent reason that many folks on both sides of the Niagara River are tied together, and in a stronger way than merely knowing each other's national anthem. That's because we are family. I mean that literally, because thousands of us in Western New York are descendants of Canadians who came here over the years and put down roots, all the while remaining in touch with their relatives who chose to stay in Canada. My Canadian great-grandparents crossed the Niagara River in the late 1890s, a time when people flowed in with ease and little legal restriction. There was work to be done in the mills and factories of Buffalo, and men like my great-grandfather were needed. My grandmother was born 2 months after her parents arrived, thus she became the first American in her large Scotch-Irish-Canadian family. Even though my ancestors settled here, my family's connection to their Canadian kin never waned and was even taken up by the following generations. I recall many times during my childhood riding across the Peace Bridge to visit cousins in Port Colborne, Hamilton, and Toronto. Our conversations with them were filled with news of other family members, sports. They loved hockey and baseball. We loved baseball and hockey, and politics. One of Grandma's uncles had been a member of Parliament, so we exchanged views on current events, sometimes spiritedly. We youngsters would get to know our more distant cousins and realize that we all regularly listened to the same Buffalo radio stations. Decades ago, when there were only commercial channels available on TV, local stations around the country signed off the air for several hours after the late-night news. When they did so, they always played the American national anthem before the screens went dark. I don't know if this happened in any other border city, but not in Buffalo. At least one station also played the Canadian anthem. Then they added a very touching addendum. They filmed little kids from Fort Erie and Buffalo standing on their respective Niagara River shores, jumping up and down and waving wildly at each other. "Hi, neighbor!" the children yelled at the tops of their voices across the watery border. In homage to over 2 centuries of being good neighbors, as well as frequently family, and in hope that this continues, maybe it's time the area TV stations resurrected a similar idea.
I like
On
it.
to you.
And in another voice from Dr. Angelo Di Rosalia, who is a urologist in Liverpool. Patients across New York are struggling to afford medical care. Rising hospital costs are a big reason why. For years, Medicare and other insurers have paid hospital-owned facilities far more than independent physician practices for identical care. If lawmakers are serious about tackling healthcare affordability, they need to address this discrepancy. A routine procedure performed in a hospital-owned setting can cost patients and taxpayers far more than the same service in an independent doctor's office. This gap is reshaping our healthcare system. Hospitals are using their payment advantage to buy up competing independent practices who often have little choice but to sell. Medicare reimbursement for independent physicians has increased less than 10% since 2001, and the costs associated with operating a practice, meanwhile, are up roughly 60%. After adjusting for inflation, Medicare physician reimbursements have declined roughly one-third over the last quarter century. Hospitals acquiring independent practices routinely reclassify them as hospital outpatient departments and bill at higher rates. Over time, this dynamic reduces competition and limits patient choice. When hospitals faced fewer independent competitors, they gained greater leverage to raise prices. In other words, Medicare's payment structure is actively driving consolidation within the healthcare market. As of 2012, just 29% of physicians were affiliated with a hospital. By 24, that figure was 47%. Policymakers can reverse this trend by ensuring that care is delivered in the lowest cost setting capable of providing high quality treatment. That's the idea behind site of care optimization. Aligning payments across sites of care could reduce Medicare spending by an estimated $202 billion over a decade. Patients could also see their out-of-pocket costs fall by $152 billion over that same period. We don't need to accept a system where a clinic's ownership structure, rather than medical complexity or need, determines price. Enacting reforms that encourage site of care optimization would help restore competition, ensure that patients can continue to seek care from independent physicians if they choose, and make care more affordable for patients across our state.
Okay, and AI could be the best hope for America's sagging economy. If you take the long view, America's economic outlook is pretty bleak. It is overwhelmed by debt it has no plans to reduce. Even more troubling is its aging population, which will reduce growth and leave fewer people to pay all of that debt. There is only one hope, a sudden increase in productivity that will boost growth so much it will pay for everything. That is precisely the promise, or one of them, of AI. But what are the chances of it coming true? The stock market is banking on it, as is Kevin Warsh, President Trump's nominee to chair the Federal Reserve, who is hoping AI-driven growth could justify a cut in interest rates. It's a tall order, as net interest outlays are expected to take up 5.4% of U.S. GDP by the year 2055. And that's assuming interest rates lower than they are currently. Meanwhile, America's fertility rate is about 1.7, below the replacement rate of 2.1. It is even lower in other countries. At this rate, the world population is expected to peak in 2025 and take 2 percentage points off GDP by the year 2050. But history is full of moments when either the end of humanity or the exhaustion of national resources seemed inevitable, and we have always persevered, eventually and most of the time ignoring famine, pestilence, and war. We did so mostly because of our ability, especially in the last few hundred years, to come up with some innovation or another that delivered unimaginable prosperity. Innovation makes us more productive, which means we can do more with fewer resources. It can help make up for a shrinking population. So the question is how much growth innovation can drive. The falling population and heavy debt load mean productivity will need to increase GDP by at least 2.5%. Maybe 3%, depending on the path of the interest rates. For some context, the electrification of the economy resulted in a 2% real average growth rate over the last 150 years. It not only powered the economy in the 1880s, but it also enabled future innovations. AI will have to do better. Is that realistic? Google CEO Sundar Pichai thinks so. In 2018, he called AI one of the most important things humanity is working on, saying it could be as profound as harnessing the power of fire. It is hard to put a number on that, but fire level growth sounds like it would be more than 2%. We economists, having studied the industrialization of previous centuries, tend to make more conservative assumptions, something between harnessing fire and destroying humanity. But it may be reasonable to expect better than the 2% growth rate that followed electrification because innovation happens so much faster now. The best case scenario is a 5% growth rate for some time, though that may not be sustainable. The U.S. is nowhere near that now. Labor productivity was up 2.1% last year, with a 4.4% annualized rate in the last quarter. It is unclear whether AI or any innovation is the reason. It could be the smaller labor force from less immigration. Some industries that use AI are reporting more productivity, but so are non-tech industries. It's still early days. It took the steam engine more than 100 years to show up in productivity statistics, and the internet has yet to. The high growth scenario will probably take a few decades to transpire, with more modest increase initially. For Warsh and other government and elected officials, that's bad news. It is unrealistic to expect AI to justify rate cuts anytime soon. The U.S. will be lucky if AI produces enough growth to pay for the next decade's Social Security shortfalls. There are also headwinds that may slow adoption and growth. Innovation, it's messy, leading to financial booms and busts. People lose jobs and some never find another one. The desire to control the downside risk could throttle any upside. Most Americans say the risk of AI outweigh its benefits, and this negativity bias could invite more regulations that will slow implementation, similar to what Europeans are trying. Fear of job loss will also probably slow implementation because many workers don't like to use new technology. All of that being said, at least right now, innovation from AI is America's only hope to make up for all its economic shortcomings. That may not be fire, but hopefully it will be close. And that was from Allison Schrager.
In the editorial cartoon, I might just give you a little background here. The Boston Bruins at home were one of the top teams with victories. And so the editorial cartoon is like a gravestone almost of TD Garden where the Bruins play, and then these big pillars that you would think of maybe Rome, and they're just being wiped out by a buffalo saber who is standing there with the saber sword, and he has chunked off a piece of the Bruins name with the B stuck on the saber with his hands on the air, and the rest of it on the rock just says ruins. Awesome. Very awesome. Okay, now how about some stuff about Donald Trump? Fed up Americans are no longer buying president's shtick. The British monarch came from Congress to jointly celebrate the 250th anniversary of the former American colonies, throwing off his 5-time great-grandfather to become the independent United States. But the speech for King Charles III was enough to make Americans want to swap their current president, a wannabe king, for the real thing again. Just kidding, of course. Yet Charles, in his 28-minute homage on Wednesday to the two countries, shared ideals and tenets in democracy, the rule of law, and checks and balances on executive power by an independent judiciary and legislature, and his affirmation of the mutual benefits of alliances like NATO, free trade, diversity, and action against climate change, delivered the sort of stirring performance that President Trump is incapable of. It took a king to remind a shamefully complicit Republican-controlled Congress that its constitutional role, drawn by America's founders from the Magna Carta, is to ensure that U.S. governance is not by the will of one, but by the deliberation of many, representing the living mosaic of the United States. Democrats led the standing ovation. For the one's part, meanwhile, the White House, after the speech, posted a photo of Trump and Charles labeled "Two Kings" with an emoji of a bejeweled crown. I know, it was the usual sort of Trumpian joke to own the libs, but it wasn't funny. Nor was Jimmy Kimmel's joke last week about Melania Trump having a glow like an expectant widow. But that sure didn't justify King Donald and his court threatening Disney ABC station license again to get Kimmel's employers to fire him. Last fall, it was public revulsion at such a heavy-handed attack against Kimmel and free speech more broadly that forced Trump and Disney to back off. And now, after months more of Trump's abuse of powers, deadly violence by federal immigration agents, military strikes against alleged drug-running boats, the Versaillification of the White House, mounting evidence of Trump family self-enrichment, and an unauthorized war on Iran, It seems the American public is really tired of Trump's self-aggrandizing strongman shtick. Perhaps it was his nightmarish poll of late that had the president awake at 4 a.m. on Wednesday. At that pre-dawn hour, he sought to burnish his tough guy aura, posting a warning to Iran. No more Mr. Nice Guy. The words captioned an AI-generated photo of Trump in aviator sunglasses with an assault rifle and explosions bursting in a mountain redoubt behind him. Few are fooled. Last Monday, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz decreed Trump's Mideast miscalculation and fruitless negotiations with Iran. An entire nation is being humiliated by the Iranian leadership. But what's more important for the future is Americans' own disparagement of their president and the fact that a growing majority of Americans see Trump as a cartoonish caricature of himself, and that includes some of his own voters. Take heart in that, because this blowback suggests the country's reclamation of the foundational values and aspirations that Charles eulogized, and that, not cage fighting on the White House lawn or a triumphal arc, is how to mark the nation's semi-quincentennial of independence. Trump will never face the voters again, but for him to be discredited so widely is to help ensure that the Trump line of would-be MAGA heirs ends with him. Polls in recent days showed the president's approval rating at new lows, not only for him in both of his terms, but also for any modern president at this stage of his administration. His polling average is now below 40% for the first time. In some polls, he's as low as 30s. Voters overwhelmingly disapprove of his handling of major issues, including the economy. Trump went to war with Iran, breaking a signature campaign promise, without the usual rally-round polling bump that presidents tend to enjoy when the U.S. goes to war, and he's lost ground since. The one-way trend seems likely to continue, ominously for Republicans who will stand as Trump's proxies in the midterm. Trump is so drunk with power and so cocooned in a bubble of bootlickers that he gives no sign of altering the behavior and policies that are repelling his constituents. Instead, he persists in a costly war, poo-poos and resulting higher gas prices, taxes Americans further with tariffs, prosecutes his political enemies, alienates allies, and slaps his guilt, name and or photo, his mugshot no less, on everything from buildings to U.S. passports and national park passes. Of a dozen Trump voters the New York Times featured this week after they participated in earlier focus group, every one harshly criticized him. 9 had buyer's remorse. Even a Maryland Republican named Michelle, who was among the 3 who didn't say they regret their votes, lamented, "I feel foolish," and wondered what might have been if Trump would have approached the country and the problems that the nation had been having as passionately as he had his personal vendettas. The next day, Tuesday, the Justice Department for a second time indicted former FBI director and Trump nemesis James Comey on trumped-up charges, pun intended, having failed in a first such attempt last year. It's something new every week. Daniel from California complained in that New York Times group. Doge, Venezuela, immigration, Iran feuding with the Pope. Nancy from Arizona bemoaned, "I was hoping that Congress and other branches would keep him in check and that he'd have better advisors. It's just total chaos." Nancy also complained about Trump's ballroom fixation. And speaking of tone deafness, this week several of Trump's Senate sycophants proposed to have taxpayers pick up the $400 million tab. The trouble for Republicans is Americans aren't buying it. Not a ballroom, not Trump's other kingly designs.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time, 33 minutes after the hour. And Trump's ballroom amounts to taxpayers' abuse, says Froma Harop. Years ago, I was president of an organization called the Association of Opinion Journalists. Every year, we would run a convention in a different city and end it with a celebration in the hotel's ballroom space. Our speaker on that closing night was usually some well-known political opinionator. Members often talked about inviting the president to give that address, as had happened before. In 1947, Harry Truman spoke to the group, formerly the National Conference of Editorial Writers, as did Lyndon Johnson in the 1966. In later years, however, members argued against having the president as speaker because it would subject the attendees to oppressive security checks. After slogging through days of seminars, they wanted to just cut loose. Now, consider the recent White House Correspondents Association dinner, cut short by an apparent assassination attempt. The target appeared to be the evening's speaker, President Trump, who used the fiasco to hawk his controversial $400 million ballroom as a more secure alternative to the Washington Hilton. A federal judge has frozen the construction for lacking clear legal authority and congressional approval. Congress now has an opportunity to ditch the grandiose plan, saving taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes, Trump said it would be paid for by donations. The known donor list is heavy with the big Wall Street tech and law firm names. All have business before the federal government. Trump repaying their kindness could end up costing taxpayers a great deal. More troubling, some donor identities have been kept secret. Of course, any events at the palatial White House ballroom would require extra security, and who's going to pay for that? The taxpayers, of course. Enter Senator Lindsey Graham. He's pushing a bill to tack another $400 million to the national debt to finish what donors were to pay for and build a security infrastructure, a Secret Service annex underneath the ballroom. The White House already has a state dining room that seats about 140 guests, and if more room is needed, the East Room can accompany as many as 300. Why must the president's residence include a ballroom able to hold, according to Trump, nearly 1,000 people? Meanwhile, why must taxpayers be billed to provide a catering hall big enough for the White House Correspondents' Annual Bash? They are an independent organization, just like the Association of Opinion Journalists was. We paid for our convention space, the big dinner, and yes, security, through dues, contributions, and participation fees. Had the taxpayers funded us, I'm sure several members would have written editorials or columns and nowadays produce TikToks condemning such use of public money. On the dinner itself, it's morphed into a red carpet event crafted to glamorize what should be working journalists who cover the president. Now there's a ton of pregame coverage of who's going, who's not, who got invited to the Vanity Fair magazine party, and don't leave out the Hollywood celebrities. In his 1678 Christian allegory, The Pilgrim's Progress, John Bunyan introduced Vanity Fair as an unseemly marketplace for pleasure, status, and worldly ambition. The name of that town, Bunyan wrote, is Vanity.
And as part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. Anthony Baldwin, Robert A. Dugan, Virginia Ginny Mary Kasparek, John A. Murphy, known as Jack, I'm going to say this wrong, Virginia L., the last name is S-A-L-A, Nee Hartman, and Gertrude M. Shore. Again, if you need further information on any of these names, you can call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555.
It's time again for Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Cinco de Mayo 2026. You are self-assured, helpful, and concerned about others. You share your strong opinions. This is a slower-paced year. It's okay to rest. Take time to rejuvenate your energy and your outlook. If you are Aries, this is a tricky day. Don't get on your high horse about something and try to push your views on a friend group or organization. But tonight you will be admired. Taurus, today Mercury is in your sign at odds with Pluto, which can make you obsessed about an idea. You might be preoccupied with something all day. Tonight, you need to look out, learn, and explore. Geminis, today you might have the proverbial bee in your bonnet and you can't let go of an idea. You might be focused on subjects that deal with hidden matters or covert aspects, perhaps psychology, magic, or the occult. Tonight, check your finances. Cancer, tread carefully when talking to friends, groups, or organizations today. You might be so excited about an idea, you just won't let go. Tonight, listen and cooperate. Boy, this sounds like it's going to be an argumentative day all around. Leos, this is a poor day to defend your position with a parent, boss, or any member of authority, including the police.
Jeez.
Tonight, get yourself organized. Virgos, don't get hung up on political, religious, or racial issues today. You might be obsessed about an idea and can't let it go. Take a breath. Step backward. Caution, because issues with kids and romantic partners might become confusing. Tonight you can socialize. Libras, don't make a big deal about anything during family discussions today, because the issues are vague. Tonight you should just relax. Scorpios, you are the most forceful sign in the zodiac. Don't come on too strong today talking to others, which you might be tempted to do because you're super focused on something. Tonight, just have an interesting conversation. Sagittarius, you might be pushy at work today because you think you have a great idea, perhaps even an improvement, but others might not agree. Tonight, check your money. Capricorn, parents need to be understanding when dealing with their kids today. Don't force an issue because people can become obsessed about their ideas and their approach to things today. Tonight, you're going to win. That's the first one that's doing that. Okay. Aquarius, steer clear of arguments with family members today. You might look foolish. This is because you're obsessed about an idea which is not too skillful. Tonight, enjoy your privacy. Pisces, avoid arguments with relatives, neighbors, and siblings today. Do your best to keep an open mind and not be obsessed with any one idea. Tonight, you can just be friendly.
Okay, that sounds like somebody's obsessed with an idea. Stay home and don't argue.
Yeah,
I mean, everybody.
Everybody's obsessed, so just be quiet.
That's right.
Don't argue.
That's right. Don't speak. and as you know, the editorial for the Buffalo News is Buffalo is ready for its close-up as it looks to host the NFL Draft. Hosting the NFL Draft in 2029 or 2030 could be a defining moment for Western New York. It offers an opportunity to showcase the region's rich history and a beautiful new stadium and the legacy of the Buffalo Bills. Efforts to convince the NFL that the region is an ideal venue for the draft are already underway by the Bills and Visit Buffalo. That goal may seem far off now, but it's well worth supporting. Both the public and private sectors would ultimately need to be involved. There is potential to redefine Buffalo's national image by leveraging identity, infrastructure, and regional pride to deliver a global spectacle on par with larger cities. Fortunately, a precedent, even if it's another sport, is close at hand. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman, Sabres owner Terry Pegula, and Bills and Sabres Chief Operation Officer Pete Goelli held a news conference in KeyBank Center in January to announce that the NHL Draft will be staged in the arena on June 26th and 27th. As Bettman noted, Buffalo will have hosted more drafts than any other club in the NHL. Western New York can provide an ideal showcase. The job is proving that to NFL decision makers. And as reported by the News, Lance Lasowski, that effort is all-encompassing. About 10 people from the Bills and Visit Buffalo organizations, including Kate Hussman, the Bills' chief strategy officer, have been hard at work. They traveled to Pittsburgh recently to check out the nearly 4 million foot draft footprint created by the city and the NFL. Last spring, they traveled to Green Bay, Wisconsin to review the process of the Packers Stadium-centric draft around Lambeau Field. As Lasowski wrote, the $2.1 billion stadium would be the center of the football's universe for 3 days, with the NFL's 32 teams drafting college players across 7 rounds. The economic benefit is obvious. Western Pennsylvania gained an estimated $120 million to $213 million in revenue when Pittsburgh hosted the event this year. Anywhere from 300 to 700,000 fans would travel to Buffalo, occupying most of the city's hotel rooms and patronizing local businesses. Event spaces would be booked each night with NFL-sanctioned or non-sanctioned hospitality events. This effort is still in its early stages. The Bills and Visit Buffalo officially notified the NFL of their intent to bid for the 29-30 draft with a formal letter in August of 24. The official bid document will not be sent to both organizations for several months. It's early. The league has yet to announce the host city for 2028 after DC takes on that role in 27. The hard work involved in Western New York hosting the NFL draft starts by examining lessons from hosts like Pittsburgh and Green Bay, and then incorporating storytelling that highlights this region's history and tradition, civic coordination, and public-private partnership. Hussman is right to stress collaboration. It really will take a village when you think of all the different entities that go into this, from security to marketing to content and promotional planning to transportation. That village already exists in Western New York, a region defined by resilience and an unmatched passion for football. The framework is forming, the partnership are taking shapes, and the vision is clear. If the NFL is looking for a host region that will embrace the draft as a statement, it needs not look any further. Western New York is already built for the opportunity.
Did you know that Disneyland is employing facial recognition technology? In Los Angeles, there's nothing quite as identifiable as a face. Retailers use facial recognition technology to more easily nab shoplifters. Casinos have deployed it to keep card counters away. Even a popular New York City venue allegedly uses it to blackball people its millionaire owner considers adversaries. So it comes as no surprise to many Disneyland guests that it's now being used at the entrance to the happiest place on earth. Pretty much every other place is doing the same thing, said John Lashoffs, 73, who visits the park roughly every 6 weeks with his wife. The police, the government, they're all using facial recognition. I don't think it's going to stop. Photographs of a guest's face taken at the entrance to Disneyland and California Adventure are run through biometric technology to convert the images into unique numerical values. The images can then be compared with the pictures taken when a customer first used the ticket or the annual pass. Disney officials say the technology helps make entering and re-entering the park easier and prevents fraud. But the rapid growth of facial recognition over the past decade has raised concerns among privacy experts who caution that such data can easily be turned over to law enforcement entities or to make companies hacking targets. The normalization of facial surveillance is really problematic, said Ari Waldman, a professor of law at UC Irvine. We can't go around life hiding our faces, so this isn't just next step in surveillance, it's qualitatively different. In a world of facial recognition, when people leave their house, it automatically means they're identified. Venues over the past decade have increasingly begun to lean on facial recognition to speed up entry and purchases for their guests. At Intuit Dome, visitors can use GameFace ID to more quickly enter the stadium for Clippers games or other live entertainment. To use it, the guest just needs to upload a selfie, and the technology generates face recognition data to identify them at the arena. The venue's privacy policy states they may also infer whether you are over 21 from your selfie photo. Dodger Stadium also employs facial recognition technology for guests who want to use the go-ahead entry at certain gates into the ballpark. The technology allows parkgoers to enter without having to produce a physical or digital ticket. Some groups, including the American Civil Liberties Union, have raised concerns about the possibility of facial recognition and other biometric tracking technologies being used at the 2028 Olympic Games in Los Angeles. But at Disneyland on a recent Friday, vacationers in matching t-shirts, toddlers in princess dresses, and mouse-eared parents pushing strollers made their way through security checkpoints, giving little attention to signs posted nearby notifying guests of the theme park's new facial recognition policy. Use of this technology is optional. The signs adorned with red, green, and yellow and blue Mickey Mouse silhouettes reads. The majority of the lines into the theme parks use facial recognition technology. Guests who don't want to run their face through the technology can use a separate entrance marked with a silhouette of a head and shoulders with a slash through it. Of the dozens of lines to enter Disneyland and California Adventure, there were only 4 on this day that did not use facial recognition. Guests in those lines still had their photos taken, but the company said biometric technology was not used. Instead, an employee was seen manually validating their tickets. Facial recognition technology has long been criticized for making mistakes when identifying people, particularly people of color. Research found that systems were less likely to accurately classify the faces of women with darker complexions, and that certain makeup patterns could render the technology null. There's also a risk of data breaches, experts say. If you collect this type of data, you have put a target on your back for people to steal it, said Adam Schwartz, privacy litigation director at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. The nonprofit, which opposes government use of facial recognition data, advocates for strengthening laws to protect consumers when the technology is used by private businesses. Many at the park who spoke to the Times said deciding between the more than a dozen lines to enter the theme park came down to a simple calculation: which queue had the fewest people? Outside California Adventure, Robert Howell, age 30, was sitting near the entrance waiting for the park to open for his first visit. Howell, who was visiting from Virginia, hadn't heard about Disney deploying the technology to check parkgoers until he arrived at the park on that day. The idea of it made him a little uneasy, he said. It's a little scary because it's not clear how it's going to be used, Howell said. With TSA, I know that's an option that you can opt out, but I didn't realize you could here, so I just did it. Disney's data privacy policy notes that the numerical values created by the technology are deleted within 30 days unless they need to be kept for legal or fraud prevention purposes.
Okay, and I don't know if you knew this or not, but apparently there's meat monopolies out there, and the cost of meat is crazy, which I agree with. The Niagara Sausage Company is a deli for locals. It is a small white house across from a Presbyterian church and a sign welcoming visitors into the city of Niagara Falls. Its workers are in a deli business because they like the people. They sell slabs of marbled ribeye steak and their own sausages in countless flavors. They also sell food made by other locals: Costanzo rolls, Charlie the Butcher roast beef, and frozen pizza logs made in a factory 5 miles down the road. Customers slip spare change into an empty Folgers coffee tub on the checkout counter to support a local person's fight for a new liver. In the big business of meatpacking, the Niagara Sausage Company is one of the little guys. Norm Schneider has been a butcher since he was 16 when he got his first job by pretending to be 18. He tried not to raise his prices too much, but he has had no choice. Costs have been soaring since 2020, he said. Ribeye steak that he sold for $12 a few years ago now costs $19, he added. The price is crazy, Schneider said. And that is why Senator Minority Leader Charles Schumer visited the deli Monday morning to publicize a bill he recently introduced to fight meatpacking monopolies. The Family Grocery and Farm Relief Act would break up monopolies and bring meat prices back down, Schumer said. 4 companies, Cargill, JBS, Tyson Foods, and National Beef, control most of the meat market, Schumer said. Those companies control 85% of the beef market, 67% of the pork market, and 60% of the chicken market, he said. If the bill passes, meatpacking companies would need to choose one line of business. They could no longer control both the beef and pork markets, for example. If they did control more than one meat market, then the Federal Trade Commission would create and enforce plans to divest the businesses so the law delivers real structural change, according to the legislation. Any gaps left in the market from the divestment of meatpacking monopolies could be filled by small businesses. The bill empowers the Small Business Administration to give financial and technical assistance and loan guarantees to farmers, cooperatives, and small businesses that seek to acquire, operate, or expand divested plants or facilities. The bill also called for the Federal Trade Commission to investigate meat prices, price discrimination, and unfair methods of competition. The FTC would report its findings and enforcement to Congress. The bill requires the FTC to conduct a comprehensive study of meat and food processors with foreign ownership, such as the Chinese-owned Smithfield Foods. Ultimately, the goal of the bill is to lower meat prices for consumers and support the smaller players in the meat market, from farmers and ranchers to small delis such as the Niagara Sausage Company. The American model is competition, Schumer said. The bill isn't the only response to meatpacking monopolies. The Justice Department is investigating potential antitrust violations in American cattle and beef markets, said Todd Blanche, acting Attorney General, in a press conference Monday. President Trump ordered the investigation in November. U.S. Director of Trade and Manufacturing Pete Navarro also said Monday that there will be a trial later this week for the Department of Justice's investigation into the data company AgriStats and whether its information led to anti-competitive meat pricing. Ethan Smith, 19, a butcher who started working at the Niagara Sausage Company right after graduating from Niagara Falls High School, is hopeful about the Family Grocery and Farmer Relief Act. Schneider is training Smith to take over the deli one day, and Smith sees the prices going up, up, and up. I really hope this all goes through well, Smith said. For business, it'll be great, but for people, it'll be even better. I shop here too, a lot. I hope to see change.
And Spirit seeks approval to pay retention fees. Bankrupt discount carrier Spirit Airlines, which ceased operations on Saturday, asked a U.S. bankruptcy court for approval to pay retention bonuses to remaining employees and said it had no choice but to end their operations. Spirit is seeking court approval to pay $10.7 million in retention bonuses to employees who remain as the company ends operations, averaging $76,000 per participant, and will pay more to the top 3 executives but has not yet disclosed how much that would be. Having fought valiantly for months to reorganize and having all but succeeded, Spirit is left with no alternative to an orderly wind down of operations. Chief Financial Officer Fred Comer said on Monday in a court filing, "There are no longer any viable paths to a restructuring or to continued operations." Spirit said that payments to the top 3 executives will replace some of the payments it would have offered the senior executives under annual incentive and cash incentive plans in place before the bankruptcy. Spirit says it does not have money to conduct an organized auctions of its aircraft, engines, and other equipment, and is asking the court for permission for fast sales or to abandon and let the lenders repossess. The airline said it's nearly done issuing refunds. Spirit said customers who had purchased tickets by credit card or debit card would get automatic refunds, and most of those had been processed by Saturday evening, though it may take several days for the funds to actually show up. The carrier had been in advanced talks with the Trump administration over a $500 million government bailout that would have helped it exit bankruptcy and granted the government up to 90% of Spirit's equity. Those talks collapsed after some creditors objected. Global carriers are contending with surging jet fuel prices since the U.S.-Israeli strikes on Iran disrupted traffic through the Straits of Hormuz. Spirit was already struggling to turn a profit before the fuel shock and has faced $100 million in incremental fuel costs since March 1st.
And Giuliani is recovering from pneumonia. The former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani is hospitalized in critical but stable condition as he recovers from pneumonia, his spokesperson said. Mayor Giuliani is a fighter who has faced every challenge in his life with unwavering strength, and he's fighting with that same level of strength as we speak, spokesman Ted Goodman said Sunday on X. Goodman said Monday that Giuliani, 81, is recovering from pneumonia. He said the former mayor was diagnosed with restrictive airway disease after 9/11. President Trump posted on Truth Social that Giuliani is a true warrior and the best mayor in the history of New York City. What a tragedy that he was treated so badly by the radical left lunatics Democrats all about, and he was right about everything. They cheated on the elections, fabricated hundreds of stories, did anything possible to destroy our nation, and now look at Rudy. So sad, Trump posted on Sunday.
You're listening to Reading of Articles from the Buffalo News for today, Tuesday, May the 5th, on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. We will return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are Lori and
Lita.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Lori and
Lita. And all you people out there, weight loss era sparking new appetite for aesthetics. Aesthetic firms are betting that a growing pool of patients experiencing loose skin and facial volume loss from GLP-1 obesity drugs will fuel a new wave of demand as the sector heads into first quarter earnings this week. Companies including Apex Medical, InMode, Establishment Labs, and Evolus are targeting patients dealing with the after effects of rapid weight loss, as the obesity drug market is projected to reach $100 billion in annual sales by 2030. One of the biggest new drivers of this shift is the rapid adoption of GLP-1 drugs, Apex Chief Executive Charles Goodwin said on an analyst call, adding that demand for treatments to tighten excess skin after weight loss is likely to rise. With some weight loss drugs now available at lower out-of-pocket cost, consumers are also using the savings to invest in aesthetic treatments, boosting demand for these companies. Leading weight loss drugs, Novo Nordisk Wegovy and Eli Lilly's Zepbound, are now available to many U.S. patients for under $500 a month, almost half the initial listed price through direct-to-consumer pricing programs. Apis expects revenue to grow 9 to 11% this year, driven by demand for its minimally invasive body contouring system, which is used to treat areas of loose or sagging skin. At InMode, CEO Mosh Mizrahi said while the growing number of GLP-1 users could dampen near-term demand for traditional liposuction procedures, it is expected to boost long-term interest in minimally invasive skin tightening treatments. Long-term, we believe it will help us because once you lose fat, you have to lose skin. And you need to tighten the skin, Mizrahi said. Other parts of the market are also seeing a lift. Establishment Labs, which makes Motiva breast implants, expects annual revenue growth of about 25%, with analysts pointing to breast augmentation as a potential area of demand among GLP-1 users. Injectables maker Evolus is also positioning for growth, forecasting a revenue increase of 10 to 13%, with analysts saying demand for facial fillers could rise as more patients seek treatments for the so-called Ozempic face, a term used to describe facial sagging linked to rapid weight loss. Evolus chief executive David Moatazedi said the company has begun targeting weight loss patients more actively, calling the shift structural rather than cyclical. We don't expect it to slow anytime soon, he said, as newer weight loss therapies, including more accessible and affordable oral options, come to market. Bob Basso, president of American Society of Plastic Surgeons, said he expects more patients to achieve meaningful weight loss, which will naturally expand demand for aesthetic procedures.
wow.
Yeah, really.
In Business Briefly, GameStop makes daring $55.5 billion bid for eBay. GameStop has offered to buy e-commerce giant eBay for $55.5 billion, a tie-up that the video game retailer's boss believes could produce a legit competitor to Amazon. The offer comes amid something of a revival at eBay, which has pushed to reinvent itself in the face of rising competition from the likes of Walmart, Amazon, Shein, and Facebook Marketplace. GameStop, which became a household name during the meme stock craze of 2021, has offered $125 per share for eBay, half in cash and half in stock, the company announced on Sunday. It's an audacious bid, targeting a business nearly 4 times its size. In a letter to the chair of eBay, GameStop CEO Ryan Cohen said the company would cut costs at eBay and make it more profitable. He also sees benefits in combining GameStop's brick-and-mortar stores with eBay's online presence. GameStop's 1,600 U.S. locations give eBay a national network for authentication, intake, fulfillment, and live commerce, he noted.
That is ambitious. And so the governor, what's his name? The city has a problem with vacant and abandoned properties. Ryan has a new approach. It's called SHAME. When he was campaigning last year, Buffalo Mayor Sean Ryan frequently talked about the need to do something about every expanding list of vacant or abandoned lots building and fallow land across the city. Now that he is in City Hall, he is aiming to take steps that would pressure the owners of these properties to either improve or sell them. Ryan said his administration will compile and publish a list of the properties. The first step of what he hopes will be a process that eventually solves a problem that has plagued the city. The owners of the properties, which are scattered across the city from downtown to its residential neighborhoods, have been holding onto them in many cases for years in hoping of eventually being able to cash in with a redevelopment or sale. They are paying the taxes on them, demonstrating that they are aware of their responsibility, Ryan said. But in the meantime, he said, the buildings and properties are sitting empty and unused, sometimes boarded up or fenced in, and that is dragging down the value of properties and neighborhoods around them, contributing to blight and hindering opportunities for economic growth. There's been no effort made in the last generation to categorize those properties, interact with the owners, and encourage the owners to get those properties back into productive use with the highest economic value, Ryan said. Fallow land and fallow buildings are not good for the city of Buffalo, but we have allowed a mass accumulation of properties like that, and that's what keeps us out of the economic ballgame. By publicly naming the properties and owners, city officials hope to entice or even shame them into doing something without the city having to resort to legal actions through building code violations and housing court, and even the use of eminent domain or abandonment procedures. Ryan is also asking state lawmakers to pass a bill allowing Buffalo to tax vacant buildings and land at a different rate to make it more costly for owners to just hold onto properties. You start with the carrot. You have conversations and you cajole. But at the end, you have legal recourse to take that property, Ryan said. That's the whole concept of eminent domain. You don't want someone maintaining an empty structure in Buffalo. The mayor also noted that vacant properties account for a disproportionate number of 911 and 311 calls to the city. Drive around Black Rock, Riverside, the East Side, Old First Ward. You will find properties with chain link fences around them, Ryan said. Not only are we paying for that, every taxpayer in the city of Buffalo, but we lose the economic benefit of having those pieces of land and those structures participating in our economy. Ryan spoke late last week as the city was preparing to restart court procedures to declare the Buffalo Grand Hotel an abandoned under state law. Those proceedings were paused in January when Ryan granted a 3-month grace period to owner Harry Stinson, who was struggling to arrange financing for his plan to finish renovating and reopening the empty 486-room hotel. We don't have to wait until financial conditions change, Ryan said. That's the trap we have to get out of. We have to stop waiting on irresponsible owners for something good to happen. That reprieve expired on the 29th of April, but Stinson that day announced that he had found a partner to invest in the project. So the city held off while it evaluated Stinson's new plan to determine if it is viable. The plan then appeared to fall through the next day, however. Stinson and Deputy Mayor Thomas Baines met one Monday to decide on next steps. Stinson also owns the Wonder Bread building at 356 Forgeron Street, which he planned to redevelop as an extension of the banquet and event space at the Buffalo Grand, despite the distance between them. That building has also sat vacant for years, as Stinson has lacked the financial wherewithal to complete either project after the COVID-19 pandemic shut down the hotel and then an arson fire caused $50 million in damage just as it was slated to reopen. You want property to be put in economic usage, Ryan said. The highest and best value of property in the city of Buffalo is tax-generating commercial activity. There are many more, Ryan noted, such as the former Pratt & Lambert paint factory on Tonawanda Street, as well as the former AM&A's department store building at 377 Main Street. The AM&A's building is embroiled in a years-long court battle between at least 2 Chinese investor groups over its ownership. But that ownership uncertainty shouldn't stop the city, Ryan said. Just because you're having an ownership fight doesn't mean you can't be brought into court for not maintaining your business, Ryan said. That doesn't curtail our rights. He also cited a vacant lot at the corner of Grant Street and Potomac Avenue that is owned by billionaire John A. Catsimatidis of New York City, who owns Red Apple Group and United Refining Company, which used to operate a quick-fill gas station there. The station was demolished and the site cleared with Jersey barriers around it, but it has no other use. By contrast, the town of Amherst took Katstamatitis to court over a similar site through eminent domain, eventually prevailing and seizing the property after a multi-year fight. Amherst went through a process and the property is now back in productive economic use. The city decided to do nothing, Ryan said. We have a bunch of matters that should have been addressed, and that's not where you want to be. As building comes up, you want to address them. Ignoring them and waiting year after year, it never makes it better. It only makes it worse. And there are dozens of acres of land near Niagara and Ontario streets in Black Rock where a Michigan-based company, Ambassador Niagara Signature Bridge Group, bought up property more than a dozen years ago with hopes of building a new private international bridge in Buffalo. The company is a subsidiary of the Detroit International Bridge Company, which owns and operates the private Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor, Ontario. The venture failed to materialize, but the multi-billion-dollar company still owns the land and hasn't done anything with it. What do they intend to do with that land? How can we help you get that land back to active economic use, Ryan said. We have a plan for that land for that area of the city, and that fallow land does not comport or augment or supplement our development plan. So that's when you start looking at other options.
And Stenonis is leaving Channel 2, but the plans for future are unknown. WGRZ-TV Channel 2 meteorologist Jennifer Stenonis is exiting the NBC affiliate on Friday after 3 years in her second stint at the station. She made the announcement Friday on social networks, praising her colleagues, bosses, the station's weather team, and the viewers. A Northern California native, Stenonis rejoined Channel 2 in April of 2023 for an opening that hadn't been filled since Heather Waldman left in September of 2021. Stenonis previously worked at Channel 2 for 7 years before leaving in 2019 to focus more time on her family, her 3 young children. In her announcement this time, Stenonis didn't say why she's leaving and what her next chapter will be. She initially declined to comment in an email exchange with me. I will be happy to reach out further when I know more, she later wrote. Before joining WGRZ, Stenonis was a meteorologist at WKBW-TV Channel 7. The second time around at Channel 2 undoubtedly enabled Stenonis to witness the increasing demands on local television news staffers since she left the station the first time. There are more newscasts and additional requirements to post on social media. The stress on television news staffers also includes the unknown of what will happen, if and when, the merger between Nexstar, which owns WIBB-TV, and Tegna, which owns Channel 2, that is currently tied up in court, can go ahead. Stenonis' departure creates an opening on Channel 2's weather team, unless the station wants to use freelancers when needed until the merger issue is settled. As of Monday, Tegna doesn't have a job posting for a Channel 2 meteorologist on its website. Earlier this year, Channel 2 added Lauren Maroney as a full-time weekend meteorologist to a full-time staff that includes Patrick Hammer, Dan Russell, and Kevin O'Neill. Maroney, who replaced Paul Hare, had been a weather producer at WNBC-TV in New York City for more than 3 years. She worked as a newsroom assignment editor before getting her meteorology degree.
And Tech Buffalo, Nichols joins forces to bring AI into local classrooms. If you asked Gow School senior Brian Riggerman and robotics co-teacher Rob Marshman, the South Wales School did not have strong odds to win the Penn West California Bots IQ Robotics competition. 68 robots from mostly Pittsburgh-based schools were entered into the competition that pitted students' construction robot in battle. Several rival schools boasted multi-year robotic programs, while Gow offered its own only seniors. We're all new to this, right? Riggerman said from Gow's robotics workshop on Thursday. That's a huge thing. These veterans who have way more time, way more people, probably better equipment than us, and getting to beat them was definitely a surprise. And it just showed that all our work and all the time we spent in here definitely paid off. Gow earned honors for both robots it entered, Daisy Duck, crowned grand champion for its entire body of work, and Banshee, which won 3 straight battles to seize King of the Rumble. Rigerman and Elma native drove Banshee to victory. It was pretty stressful, Rigerman said, of driving Banshee. It's really meticulous lining up your shots, so if you're super stressed about it, it makes it way harder. I tried singing songs to distract myself from the stress.
It's a good tool.
Yes, Rigerman said the team's design of Banshee, whose thick aluminum walls allowed opposing attacks to gouge but not flex and break, allowed it to take a beating and survive. The chief feat of Gao's 10-person team was Daisy Duck's Honor, which recognizes more than just battle performance, but also engineering, design, safety, and technical documentation. Marshman, who advises the team with co-teacher Ryan Parrish and Gao Technology Director Jeff Poblacki, pointed to a thick white binder filled with sheets of documentation on power and drive systems, but also emphasized the team's quick thinking and decisiveness. The 10 team members have been about 20 minutes after a competition battle to repair the robot for the next bout. It can get really, really heated because the kids are under pressure. The clock's ticking and there's people in their ear telling them what to do. They have their own ideas of what has to be done, Marshman said. At some point, they have to make the decision of, can we get this in fight, or are we not assembled enough that we actually go together and do anything? Marshman said Gao used a software program called SolidWorks to design and construct its robots. The process values hands-on skills, 3D visualization, and creativity, but also benefits from the school's beastly computer numerical control, or the CNC machine, which reads inputted codes to make precise adjustments to the model. Some teams will focus on outfitting the robot with a damaging weapon, while others emphasize durability and maneuverability. Robots, controlled remote by students, square off head-to-head in competition inside an enclosed rink for 3 minutes. Victors are determined by knockout or the decision of 3 judges. Although it was somewhat inexperienced in the Bot IQ competition, Gao's robotic program had a 25-year history, including a long period in which classes constructed 120-pound robots and competed in much larger competitions. Gao at Large, which now enrolls about 80 students in 5th through 12th grade, celebrates its 100th year of existence in October. Predominantly a boarding school for students with dyslexia or other learning challenges, Gao enrolls about a quarter of its population from Western New York. For Rigerman, the robotics class is particularly enjoyable because of its overlap with several subjects. It's not just one subject like other school classes, he said. I've taken a lot of physics classes, so it's taking part physics and part designing and engineering. It's sort of like a sport, too, going in and playing. It's also sort of a documentation class, like getting to work on documents and learning how to professionally write stuff up. I like how it's not one thing. It's a mixture of a bunch of things. And you can see how that all comes together in the end when you actually watch your robot drive.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 18 minutes after the hour. And Shield gets sworn in as Buffalo's new police commissioner. Erica Shields is officially the Buffalo Police Commissioner. Shields, who was confirmed by the Common Council in a close vote last week, took the oath of office on Monday to lead the department, a city spokesman confirmed to the Buffalo News. She becomes the first woman and the first openly gay person to be named to that post. She was not available for an interview, but plans to speak to the media later in this week, Ian Ott, spokesman for Mayor Sean Ryan, said in a text message. She wants to focus on getting established and meeting the rank and file first, he said. Shields' confirmation process was rocky, with her clearing the council majority necessary by 1 vote, 5-4. Council members expressed concerns over the increase in the commissioner's salary, which was unanimously approved by the council earlier this year. The Ryan administration boosted the commissioner's pay from $175,000 to $250,000,
Wow.
arguing that the bigger salary was necessary to attract national talent to this department. She is the first commissioner to come from outside the department since Gil Kurlikowski, that's right, was hired by former Mayor Anthony Masiello in 1994. The salary increase, along with others approved at the time, was offset by the elimination of other positions. North District Council members Joseph Golombek took particular issue with the salary increase, saying he supported the move before seeing Ryan's proposed property tax levy increase of 25.8%. Council President Pro Tempore Zenita Everhart and Council Majority Leader Leah Halton Pope, who voted against her confirmation, also expressed concerns about the way Shields left her last two commissioner posts, citing reporting on the situations and conversations with people from the Louisville and Atlanta areas. Both also said they received phone calls from people urging them to vote in favor of her confirmation. Everhart and Halton Pope both said despite their no votes, they would work with Shields to make the city a safer place. Shields, who was announced as Ryan's pick last month, comes to Buffalo after two prior posts as commissioner for other departments. She resigned from her Atlanta post, where she served from 2016 to 2020, after an officer shot and killed Rayshard Brooks amid an incident where Brooks had stolen an officer's taser and discharged it in the direction of the police as he was fleeing. She also resigned at the request of the new mayor in Louisville, common practice when a new administration takes over. She was there from 21 to 23. Since then, she has worked for Police Training Technology Company. Shields takes the helm of the department as the city moves into contract negotiations with the Buffalo Police Benevolent Association. City police have been out of a contract since the end of June 2025. She also takes over as the department, like many others across the country, has struggled with officer recruitment, causing issues with minimum staffing levels across the ranks. The city, mirroring nationwide trends, has seen significant drops in violent crime since a brief spike that happened during the COVID-19 pandemic.
And we are moving over to sports, and I'm going to surprise everyone by starting with the Buffalo Bills. Among 15 unsigned Bills, who will return? We're now more than a week removed from the NFL draft, and a large list of former Buffalo Bills remain without a job for the 2026 season. It was thought that a market for at least some of those players might materialize after the draft concluded and teams had a better idea of what positional needs they still had. But so far, that has not happened. It is also worth noting that any free agents signed now no longer count toward the NFL's compensatory draft pick formula, which is another reason veteran free agency slows to a trickle ahead of the draft. A total of 15 members of the Bills' 2025 roster are still without a new team at this point. Here is a look at each of them in alphabetical order, along with some thoughts about whether a reunion with the Bills might make sense for both sides. Joey Bosa. The veteran edge rusher has a market value of $13.7 million, according to Sports Business website. At that price, there is no way he will be back in Buffalo. It is likely that the Bills aren't much interested in a reunion at any cost for a couple of different reasons. Number one, his fit in the new defense coordinator Jim Leonhard's 3-4 scheme is unclear. Bosa had his moments as a pass rusher in his one and only season in Buffalo, including a big sack fumble of Steelers quarterback Aaron Rodgers that resulted in a defensive touchdown. But he was liability against the run, and that is an area the Bills want to improve. Bosa should be able to find a role as a rotational edge rusher somewhere, but the Bills added Bradley Chubb in free agency, then used their top draft pick on Clemson's TJ Parker. Because of that, Bosa likely one and done as a member of the Bills. There has been consistent speculation he is destined for San Fran, where he would team up with his brother Nick on the 49ers. Next is Brandon Cooks. His veteran presence was a welcome addition to the locker room last season. By the end of the year, Cooks had earned quarterback Josh Allen's trust in some big moments. Unfortunately, he didn't always come through in those moments. The Bills added wide receiver Skylar Bell in the 4th round of the draft, a pick that has been looked at as an astute one by many analysts. The thinking here is that selection likely cut off any path Cooks might have back to the Bills roster. Gabe Davis, love the man. A torn ACL suffered in the January playoff win over Jacksonville means Davis will miss most, if not all, of the 2026 season, so there would be no need or point for the Bills to re-sign the wide receiver at this stage. Epinesa. It has been a tumultuous offseason for Epinesa, who thought he had a decent free agent deal with the Cleveland Browns, only to see them back out of the contract when he red-flagged his physical because of a neck injury. Epinesa also made a free agent visit to the Dolphins, but is yet to sign with another team. Similar to Bosa, his run defense is likely a main reason the Bills have not expressed an interest at this point in re-signing him. Dane Jackson. He came into the playoff loss against Denver cold off the bench and was beat for a touchdown on his first play of the game. Unfortunately, that is likely to be Jackson's lasting memory with the Bills, who released the cornerback earlier this offseason despite a minimal contract. That shows he is not in their plans for 2026. Daquan Jones, general manager Brandon Beane, hasn't made any big investments at defensive tackle this offseason. The only draft pick used on the position came in the 5th round when Beane chose Penn State's Zane Durant with the 181st overall pick. The Bills roster could use a veteran defensive tackle to work behind Deion Walker, maybe, but there hasn't been any reason to believe a reunion with Jones is coming. Jones, 34, has made nearly $60 million in his career, including about $30 million over the past 4 seasons with the Bills. It is possible he has reached the end of the line. Good old Matt Milano. He will go down as one of the great players of the Sean McDermott era, having joined the Bills in the 5th round of the 2017 draft. McDermott's first as head coach. Injuries slowed Milano, who's 31, and over the past few seasons, but the linebacker looks pretty good at the end of the 2025 season. Larry Ogunjobi. The decision to sign Ogunjobi, even after learning he faced a 6-game NFL suspension for violating the league's policy on performance-enhancing drugs, remains a baffling one. The defensive tackle has minimal impact after returning from that suspension. Jordan Phillips, he was one of the more outspoken players when McDermott was fired and has contemplated retirement previously, so it feels like this might be the end of the road for Phillips, the defensive tackle who turns 34 in September. At least until October, when the Bills have an injury and re-sign him for the 5th time. Jordan Poyer, similar to Milano, Poyer will be looked at as one of the great Bills of the McDermott era. The safety's knowledge of McDermott's defense was next level. It's fair to wonder if at 35 years old he is not eager to attempt to learn an entirely new scheme, regardless of whether the Bills wanted him back. Matt Prater. He did a nice job for the Bills, who needed a kicker after Tyler Bass was injured in training camp. Bass is healthy now, though, and will regain his job. Prater turned 42 in August, but proved last year he is still capable of being an emergency replacement if another team loses its kicker to injury, similar to how the Bills did last summer. Taylor Rapp. A knee injury ended Rapp's 2025 season after just 6 games. A former second-round pick for the Rams, the safety has made 72 career starts, including 24 of the past 3 years in Buffalo. The emergence of Cole Bishop, coupled with the additions of C.J. Gardner-Johnson, free agent, and Geno Stone, a free agent, and Jalen Kilgore from the draft, have made it unlikely the Bills have room for Rapp to return. Curtis Samuel. Well, we'll put it as nicely as possible. It didn't work for Samuel the past 2 years as a modestly priced free agent signing at wide receiver. Injuries were a near constant problem, and both sides would be best served moving on. Shaq Thompson. He expressed an interest in returning to the Bills earlier in the offseason when responding to a message on social media. The fit seems like it could be here, as the Bills could use a veteran depth option behind presumed insider linebacker starter Dorian Williams and Terrell Bernard. Thompson is coming off a strong first season in Buffalo. His projected average annual value on a new contract, according to SpotTrack, is $2.4 million, which would fit under the Bills' tight salary cap. And lastly, Trey White. His reunion with the Bills last season was a success. After a frustrating 24-season split between the Rams and the Ravens, White returned to Buffalo and proved to be a worthy, low-risk addition. He ended up becoming a trusted starter who made perhaps the biggest play of the team's playoff win over the Jaguars. Going into the draft, Beane identified cornerback as the Bills' biggest positional need, which explains why he traded into the bottom of the 2nd round to draft Ohio State Davidson Igbinosun. Even after doing that, the Bills could use a bit more depth at the position. Beane has consistently said the organization would be open to White returning. If it were to happen, he would provide leadership for a room that features and the 25 draft round pick Maxwell Hairston, who still has a lot to prove in his career. Of all the players on this list, White is the one beans should prioritize the most.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. Let's talk Sabres.
Yeah, right.
Opening the second round in Buffalo, the Sabres need to take advantage. And this article is listed as home improvement. The Montreal Canadiens will be here Wednesday night in the wake of what has to be one of the most bizarre Game 7 victories in NHL history. As you would imagine, the Buffalo Sabres were closely watching the Habs 2-1 win over the Tampa Bay Lightning and the deciding game of their first-round series Sunday night. Hard to believe a team could win any game with just 9 shots on goal or with a combined 3 in the second and third periods. But the Habs did exactly that, and not in some ho-hum affair in November. It was in a Game 7, a massive stage in the sport, and it punched their ticket to Buffalo. The Habs are staying in the sunshine and will practice Tuesday in Tampa before heading north. Game 1 of the team's second-round series is Wednesday, 7 p.m., KeyBank Center. Speaking with reporters Monday in the arena, Sabres coach Lindy Ruff gave it up to the Habs for pulling it out on Alex Newhook's mid-air bank shot off Tampa Bay goalie Andrei Vasilevsky with 8 minutes and 53 seconds left. You've got to find different ways to get it done. You watch that game, and you've got a crazy goal, and you haven't had a lot of opportunities, Ruff said. Sometimes it doesn't look pretty, but you've got to find ways to win games, and they found a way to win Game 7. It was a fun game to watch. It was tight, Captain Rasmus Dahlin added. It was one of those Game 7s you want to watch, so it was fun. We just kind of waited to see who we were going to play. Center Ryan McLeod said the low-event nature of Game 7 made for a fascinating finish to the series. The Sabres and Habs split 4 games this season, with each team scoring 13 goals, and McLeod said he expects the tempo to pick up. A lot of speed, a lot of skill. They play with a lot of pace, and they're well coached, McLeod said. It's going to be a good test for it. They're kind of a younger team like us, so it's going to be fun. They play with a high level of intensity, and it's going to take all of us going. The Sabres have a huge challenge ahead in dealing with Montreal center Nick Suzuki, 8 points in the 4 regular season meetings, and 51-goal winger Cole Caulfield, who had 4 goals and 6 points against Buffalo. Caulfield, age 25, has improved his goal total in all 5 of his NHL seasons and finished 2 behind Colorado's Nathan MacKinnon for the league lead. But the 5'8" Caulfield was held to 1 goal by the Lightning. He's got a great shot, a great release, Ruff said. He's good at hiding, finding quiet areas, and he's got a great release. A smaller man with a small stick, quick release, you think you can get to him, but you can't because he's getting the shot away. Great skater at the same time. He's got a complete package and is incredibly strong on the puck. They've had a lot of skilled guys, but it's the same with everybody. You have to take away time and space. Stay on top of them. Be hard on them, Dahlin said. When they get time, it doesn't take much for them to score a goal. They have so much skill, so we have to play a solid defensive game in this series. The atmospheres in the 2 arenas figure to be talking point of the series. KeyBank's lunacy has reached levels not seen since 2007, and Montreal's Bell Center has been crazy as well. That includes a full house inside Sunday for a watch party of the game in Tampa. Ruff said there is no real way to control the Montreal crowd's noise level, other than to proper puck management to prevent the Canadiens from having a fast start in a game. That'll be a high-energy building for sure, Ruff said. Every building, though, in the playoffs now is high energy. It's one of the great places to play hockey in Canada. To be there for a game, whether you're the home team or the road team. I know I couldn't wait when I started my career to play in Montreal because of just the history of that place. The Sabres stayed off the ice Monday and had multiple meetings to prepare for the series. Ruff said it isn't just a case of moving on to the next opponent. It's also about boosting elements of the team game as it heads deeper into the playoffs. You wipe the slate clean, but there's areas you've got to improve, he said. Our home game has to be better. That's controlling emotions. I think sometimes your home fans can drive you to a crazier level of play, maybe even a reckless level of play. You're in your own building, you want to entertain sometimes, but we need to get our home game into a better place. The Sabres went just 1-2 at home in the first round, and both teams blew a chance to wrap up a clinching game in overtime in front of their own fans. Each had to finish their series on the road. We've become a pretty damn resilient team. We can manage the emotions of a series, the disappointment of losing a couple games at home, Ruff said. Game 5, an overtime game that could have been. Imagine the noise in this building if you score the overtime goal and you clinch the series. We didn't. You've got to deal with that emotion after you didn't get it done. All is forgiven with the Sabres for wrapping up their first series win since 2007. A few hundred fans greeted them at the airport at 1:30 a.m. Saturday after the Game 6 win in Boston. It's another sight many of them had never seen before. To see the city, what it can be like, what it's like now, it's just unbelievable, Dahlin said. That's the big thing. The hockey is kind of what I expected. It's fast, it's hard, it's fun. You really understand now, or I realize now, this is what you want to do every year. So I'm having a ton of fun.
And here's some pretty cool news. Buffalo Sabres defenseman Rasmus Dahlin has been named one of the 3 finalists for the Bill Masterson Memorial Trophy, awarded to the NHL player who best exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication to hockey. Dahlin has been named along with Winnipeg center Jonathan Toews and Colorado captain Gabriel Landeskog in voting by members of the Professional Hockey Writers Association, and the winner will be announced in June. Dahlin had 19 goals and 55 assists for a career-high 74 points for the Sabres this season, while also posting a career-best plug 18 rating. Plus rating, not plug. He captained the team for his first berth in the Stanley Cup playoffs since 2011, and that continues when Buffalo's second-round series against the Montreal Canadiens opens at 7 p.m. Wednesday in Quebec Center. The backdrop to his season came when he was on summer vacation in France and his fiancée Caroline Medovac was stricken by an illness that quickly turned critical. Medovac suffered heart failure and spent several weeks on life support before ultimately needing a heart transplant that required months of hospitalization and rehab. She revealed earlier this year that she had almost lost the couple's unborn child. Dahlin twice took leave of absence from the team to join Medovac for medical checkups and got a huge ovation when he was shown on the Jumbotron during the Sabres' March 25th game against Boston. That was her first in the building this season. Sabres coach Lindy Ruff said Monday how impressed he had been by Dahlin's perseverance and commitment to the organization. He openly said that I'm a Buffalo Sabre and I can help make this team be better. And he's gone out and done it, Ruff said. I think you see the smile on his face, and I've had conversations with him. I even hear him say, these fans are crazy. It's a new level of crazy in the playoffs for sure. But for Dahls and the years he's had, the adversity he's faced, I'm so glad we're right here, right now. Dahlin, who spoke to reporters on Monday before the NHL's announcement, is looking to become Buffalo's third Masterson winner. Don Luce, won the award in '75, and Pat LaFontaine took it in 1995. Landeskog missed 3 full regular seasons with knee issues after playing through them during the Avalanche's 2022 Stanley Cup run. 4 procedures later, he played in 60 games this year, collecting 14 goals and 21 assists. Toews, a 3-time Cup winner in Chicago, returned to the game this year with his hometown team after a 2.5-year absence due to health-related issues that included long COVID-19 and chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Toews played 82 games this season for the first time since 2018-19, notching 11 goals and 18 assists, and led NHL centers in face-off percentages at 62.1%. Carrick might be closing in on return. Center Sam Carrick, who had an upper body injury, has been ruled out for the series by Ruff on Sunday, while still on the mend from the injury he suffered in a fight with New York Islanders captain Andre Lee on the 31st of March. But Ruff said Monday he was surprised to learn that Carrick was visiting team doctors on Monday to get an update on his status. He thinks he's further along than maybe I portrayed on Sunday, Ruff said. So with good news, he could join our teams back for practice on Tuesday, today, which is great news. That would put him in a little bit ahead of schedule. Carrick would be a huge addition to the fourth line and to Buffalo's chances in the face-off circle. The Sabres are just 15th out of the 16 playoff teams in face-off percentage at 43.8%, while Montreal is third at 55.6%.
And a roundabout news and notes. Ariyama owns the Final Four fallout. UConn women's basketball coach Gino Ariyama spoke to the media on May 4th for the first time since the Final Four when the Huskies lost in the national semifinals to South Carolina. Ariyama was infamously upset with both of the officials and the Gamecocks coach Dawn Staley in the game's aftermath. The two Final Four coaches got into a shouting match on the sidelines after sharing a brief handshake. Ariyama said something to Staley, and then the exchange got heated. You do things on the spur of the moment sometimes, but they usually come from things that have been building up for some time, Ariyama said to a group of a dozen reporters at the Worth Champion Center on the UConn's campus. When I walked into the locker room afterwards, you're just shaking your head going, 5 more seconds. You couldn't keep it in for 5 more seconds? At the end of a 62-48 win for South Carolina Ariyama was upset about the officiating and what he believed was a slight from Staley involving a pregame handshake. A winner of 12 national titles, the coach was asked if he saw the many conversations in the media and on the internet after that post-game altercation. I didn't see a lot of it, but the fallout is to be expected, Ariyama said. Maybe some of it was warranted, and some of it was people lying in the weeds, waiting for that particular moment. The Derby set some TV ratings records. An estimated record 24.4 million people watched Golden Temple's historic comeback win on Saturday at the 152nd running of the Kentucky Derby. NBC released that figure based on preliminary data collected from the Nielsen and Adobe Analytics on Sunday. The previous peak audience had been at 21.8 million the year prior, meaning the 2026 running in which jockey Jose Ortiz guided Golden Temple from the last place around the final turn all the way into first was up 12% over the previous most watched Derby. Sherry DeVoe, the horse's trainer, became the first woman trainer to win the Kentucky Derby in the event's history on Saturday. NBC's presentation also delivered the event's highest average audience at 19.6 million, once again topping the previous year's 17.7 million. The streaming numbers, mostly directed through Peacock, represented yet another record with an average minute audience of 1.3 million viewers, clearing the figure of 959 in 2025. Mercedes is up for F1's return to V8s. Mercedes would be absolutely up for Formula One switching to V8 engines from 2030 or 2031, but the sport must remain connected to the real world, according to motorsport director and team boss Toto Wolff. The heading of the governing FIA, Mohammed Ben Sulayem, said at the Miami Grand Prix that the switch from the current crop of 1.6-liter V6 hybrid power units would happen by 2031 at the latest. Speaking after Kimi Antonelli won Sunday's race for Mercedes, the team's 4th triumph in 4 races this season, Wolff sounded positive about the plan. Long term, I think from a Mercedes standpoint, we are open to engine regulations, said the Austrian. We love V8s. That has only great memories. Detroit Mercy men faced postseason ban. Detroit Mercy men's basketball team will be hit with a postseason ban for the 26-27 season due to academic shortcomings. The NCAA is set to announce the annual academic progress rate results on Tuesday. Athletic Director Robert Vowles confirmed the bad news in a letter sent to boosters and fans on Monday, according to the Detroit News. The Titans fell just short of an NCAA tournament berth this past season. Detroit Mercy lost 66-63 to Wright State in the Horizon League Championship game that was on March 10th. It is a big blow because of the momentum we had in last year's tournament. Head coach Mark Montgomery told the Detroit News of the one-year penalty. This is the third time in a decade that Detroit Mercy's program has been penalized for falling below the minimum APR score, along with 2017-18 and 23-24. Seems obvious what they need to work on. Back to you.
Got that. So let's move over to asking Eric. Dear Eric, 3 years ago, my older sister sent me a book that stated that gay people are satanic, Marxist, and pedophiles. I am gay and wrote her back asking if she believed this. She replied that she did. I was shocked and angry and stopped communicating with her. Her husband died 8 months ago, and I received an effusive apology from her stating how sorry she was that she had hurt me. I responded that what was important to me was whether she still believed her earlier statements. She said she did not. So I attended my brother-in-law's memorial held 2 months later. I was not invited to stay with her or at her nearby adult children's homes, and only heard of an evening dinner event at the last minute after I had made plane reservations that conflicted with my attending. She recently asked me if she could stay with me during a layover in my city. I said yes. I really want to ask her how she got those ideas about me in the first place. Did reading one book prove more compelling than a lifetime of knowing me? And what made her change her mind? I can't help wondering if it was just a ruse to get me to attend the memorial. I think she wants to patch things up, but a serious line was crossed. She and I may be back on speaking terms, but our relationship will never be the same as it was. I'm not sure what compels me to want to say these things to her, and I'm not sure if it's the right thing to do. What do you think? Signed, Brother in a Quandary. Dear brother, whether she realized or intended it or not, when she sent you that book, she was starting a conversation, and that conversation needs some resolution. This isn't about bringing up old drama. As you stated, there's still active questions about what she thinks of you that will impact how you engage with each other going forward. Prior to her visit, have a phone call with her. You can be completely upfront about the purpose of the call. I love you and I value the relationship we had, but the events of the past 3 years have left me confused and altered our relationship. I believe that we can build a relationship going forward, but that requires clarity. Are you willing to, and able to talk with me more about it now? Things have changed. That doesn't mean a future isn't possible, but this isn't something you have to simply sweep under the rug. You're trying to define healthy boundaries in this relationship and determine how and with whom you're safe. Dear Eric, my sister, who lives about 500 miles away from me, has asked me to apologize for something she perceives I should apologize for. I replied to her to please let me know what she wants me to apologize for, and she pivoted without answering, saying she would not let evil into her house, but then continues to send references to a young man in her neighborhood who may have committed suicide or devastating weather that has destroyed houses near her. It seems she wants to set borders for what she wants to talk about. I feel like I'm walking on eggshells. This is hurtful and bothers me a lot. Any suggestions? Signed, Wanting to know what the apology is for. Dear Wanting, if there is anyone closer to your sister, a friend or relative, who has a better relationship with her and can check in on her, in person or on the phone, please get in contact with him. Her comments read as strange to me, perhaps troubling, because they don't quite make sense. They could suggest she's experiencing a mental health crisis. You can also find information and resources on the National Alliance of Mental Health website, or NAMI, NAMI.org. I want to underscore that it's inappropriate for me to guess at what could be happening here on a psychological level. It could be nothing, but the information you've been given suggests that further investigation is needed. You won't be able to resolve what she believes is coming between the two of you until you find out what's behind her behavior. It's also important to make sure that she's safe and not a danger to herself and others. I don't want to alarm you. Simply put, Asking more questions about what's going on in her life may get you further than trying to discern what she wants you to apologize for. Once you get clarity on the former, you'll be better equipped to have a conversation about the latter, if such conversation is warranted. It may be that there's nothing to apologize for at all.
And in golf, Morikawa withdraws from Truist Tourney. World number 6 ranked Colin Morikawa has withdrawn from this week's Truist Championship, the PGA Tour said on Monday. Andrew Putnam takes his place in the field for the signature event at Quail Hollow Club in Charlotte, North Carolina. No reason was provided. Morikawa, 29, has been dealing with a back issue since his first round withdrawal at the Players, and that was on March 12th. Since then, he has recorded a T7 finish at the Masters and a T4 at the RBC Heritage before finishing tied for 62nd at last week's Cadillac Championships, 20 strokes behind winner Cameron Young. Morikawa is a 7-time winner on the PGA Tour, including 2 major titles at the PGA Championship back in 2020 and the Open Championship in 21. He won the AT&T Pebble Beach Pro-Am just in February. Putnam, age 37, finished T18 last week at Trump National Doral for his 3rd top 20 effort of the season. Cink wins another championships major. Less than a month ago, Stuart Cink had never won a PGA Tour Champions Major. Now he has won 2. Cink shot a 3-under par 69 on Sunday at the Regions Tradition in Birmingham, Alabama, taking home the title by 3 strokes over nearest competitor Scott Hend of Australia in breezy conditions. It wasn't easy, he said, but I was pretty resilient and I trusted what I had and our game plan was good. You know, I wasn't perfect by any stretch, but I played good golf under the circumstances. The Florence, Alabama native had his own cheering section at Greystone Golf and Country Club on Sunday as Cink carded 5 birdies against 2 bogeys to earn his 2nd straight major after winning the Senior PGA Championship in Bradenton, Florida 2 weeks ago. This is where I cut my teeth in golf, he said. The fans out here are awesome. I saw a lot of familiar faces. Everybody's put on the years, but some people from junior golf that I played with and against and their families. A lot of my friends and family have been out here all week anyway, that I knew they were coming. It's just been great. LIV Golf hires investment bank. With LIV Golf in search of new funding partnerships, the league announced the New York-based Ducera Partners LLC will serve as an investment banking advisor as it seeks financial stability moving forward. Saudi Arabia's public investment fund already has announced it will end financial support of LIV Golf at the end of 2026 season. Last month, LIV announced a new board to be headed by Eugene Davis, the chairman and chief executive officer of Pyrenate Consulting Group LLC, and John Zinman, the founder and managing member of JZ Advisors LLC. They are tasked primarily with institutionalizing the league, formalizing its ownership structure, and evaluating the range of strategic opportunities according to the league. This league has proven its value, and our focus now is on building the right financial foundation for the long term, LIV CEO Scott O'Neill said. Ducera brings deep transaction experience and a track record of delivering in complex high-stakes situations. They are the right partner for this process. Founded in 2021, LIV Golf made its debut in June of 2022 and used lavish, guaranteed contracts to lure dozens of stars like Dustin Johnson, Phil Mickelson, Jon Rahm, and Bryson DeChambeau away from the PGA. Former LIV participant Brooks Koepka already has returned to the PGA Tour, while Patrick Reed will return later this season. PIF has provided LIV with more than $5 billion, but the league has reportedly lost millions of dollars per year. Earlier this month, Yasser Al-Rumayyan, PIF's governor and LIV's main financial backer, shared a plan for the kingdom to cut back on international investments and focus more on domestic projects. LIV notes that Ducera is a leading investment bank specializing in complex, high-stakes corporate finance. The investment giant is noted to have $850 billion in transactions through media, entertainment, and sports ventures. In touting significant momentum, LIV said that sponsors and partnerships have increased 40% per year. Ticket sales have grown 130%, and that tournament broadcasts have reached 1 million households worldwide.
And one quick historical note, in 1862, outnumbered Mexican forces repelled French troops at the Battle of Puebla. The victory gave rise to the celebration of Cinco de Mayo, which later evolved in the United States to a celebration of Mexican heritage. And you have been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Tuesday, May 5th. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, you can call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Lori
and Lita. Thanks for listening. Take care, and as always, keep smiling.
Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of our May-June 2026 program schedule. A reminder, all programming is subject to change. On weekdays at 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. On Monday, we got Wired Magazine. Tuesday, Psychology Today. On Wednesday, we have The Atlantic. Thursday, After 50. And on Friday, Western New York Heritage. From 7 to 8 a.m. on Monday, we got the Wall Street Journal Weekend Edition. Tuesday, Magnolia Magazine. Wednesday, the Supermarket Ads. Thursday, Fortune Magazine. And then Friday, Buffalo Spree. At 8 to 8:30 each day, we have the daily newspaper comics, community service messages, and a Bible reading. 8:39 on Monday, we have the Chautauqua Gazette. Tuesday, the River Rock Times. Wednesday, Reader's Digest. Thursday, the Investigative Post. And then Friday, Buffalo Rising. From 9 to 11, we have the Buffalo News live. At 11 a.m. to noon on Monday, we have the New York Times Magazine. Tuesday, the Supermarket Ads. Wednesday, the New York Times Style section. Thursday, the New York Times Business section. And on Friday, Nature magazines. At noon on weekdays, we got the USA Today, the Nation's newspaper, live. From 2 to 3 p.m., we have our weekday afternoon best-selling books. Starting on May 4th to May 22nd, we have Ira Gershwin by Michael Owen. From May 25th to June 15th, we have 1929 by Andrew Ross Sorkin. From June 16th to July 1st, we have To Rescue the American Spirit by Brett Baer. From 3 to 4 p.m. on Mondays, we have Smithsonian. Tuesday, the National Geographic. Wednesday, Health magazines. Thursday, the New Yorker. And then Friday, New York Magazine. At 4 to 6 p.m., we rebroadcast our morning's Buffalo News reading. 6 to 7, we have the New York Times Love and Relationships. Tuesday, the Supermarket Ads. Wednesday, Buffalo Business First. Thursday, Consumer Reports. Friday, Wall Street Journal. 7 to 8 p.m. On Monday, we have Barron's. Tuesday, The Week. Wednesday, Time Magazine. Thursday, the Wall Street Journal Review. And then Friday, the Buffalo Criterion. From 8 to 9 on Monday, we play the Toronto Star. And then Tuesday through Friday, we play the New York Times. From 9 to 10 p.m. on Monday, we have The Economist. Tuesday, Kiplinger's Magazine. Wednesday, Comic Books. Thursday, Harper's Magazine. And then Friday, Discover Magazine. 10 p.m. we have our weeknight best-selling book. Starting May 4th to May 22nd is The Widow by John Grisham. May 26th to June 5th is Crossroads by Jonathan Franzen. June 8th to June 19th, we have The Shop on Hidden Lane by Jane Ann Krentz. June 22nd to July 10th, Never Flinch by Stephen King. At 11 midnight, we have on Monday through Thursday, we have the Wall Street Journal. From midnight to 2 a.m., also on Monday through Thursday, we have the USA Today rebroadcast. At 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. on Friday and Saturday, we have our late night books. Ending on May 9th is Gone Before Goodbye by Harlan Coben and Reese Witherspoon. And then beginning on May 15th to July 10th is King Sorrow by Joe Hill. And at 1 o'clock, we have a radio reading overnight service. It's rebroadcasts. On Saturday at 6 a.m., we have our weekend early morning book reading. Ending on May 3rd is Heart Life Music by Kenny Chesney. May 9th to June 13th is Friends Until the End by James Grant. June 14th to July 4th is Breakneck by Dan Wang. At 8 to 8:30 we have our daily newspaper comics, community service messages, and a Bible reading. 8:30 we have The Challenger,